So after a year, I finished reading it. A solid year because it was so depressing and horrible, horrible, horrible experience. I'm talking, of course, about the Jakarta method. Now, I would totally recommend this book for one reason. It covers a great deal of contemporary history. It covers a tremendous amount of violence. And it shows that the West, particularly the United States, is responsible for this violence. No country comes anywhere near in comparison to the volume of coups and overthrows of foreign governments. Now, if you're really well politically studied, or you're around people that are, you will know that the US has overthrown and had interventions 80 times in foreign countries. Now, the people that I would recommend this book to are anarchists and liberals. I would recommend this book to Western chauvinists and people who spend their time attacking Russia, China, Iran, Cuba, Korea, Venezuela, etc., etc. The countries that our media wants us to focus on and hate. I would mainly recommend this book to them because they are the people whose focuses has been redirected to where it isn't useful. Now, the book, it does a wonderful job at breaking down and going through the history of the CIA overthrows of Iran, Guatemala, and Indonesia. It goes through how Indonesia had the third largest communist party in the world, and that is why the US funded mercenaries and massacred 2 million people there. It goes through that how it was the foundation and how that method came to be used more and more and more and more in more countries, to the point where Jakarta is synonymous with right-wing anti-communist extermination of humanity, where across the world, Jakarta is a colloquial term for saying, we're going to massacre communists. We're going to massacre people suspected of communists. We're going to massacre unionists. We're going to massacre all these people. Now, the book took me a year to read because it was so painful. I would read 3 or 4 pages and have to stop because of how much violence is contained within it. Now, for the purposes that I recommended reading it, there's another book that I would recommend too for the same identical reason, which is The Open Veins of Latin America. This is a book that people can read to focus on the West as the kingpin of imperialism and global capitalism. The kingpin and hegemony, the people who wield the power, who dominate the world, and exterminate indigenous people, who crush labor rights, who commit every different level of injustice, and who maintain things as they are. My only critique of the book is that, and this ties to something, a broader trajectory or broader pattern that I've noticed a couple times. My critique is that I think the author needed to put some anti-Soviet sentiment in the book in order for it to sell well. Because he claims that the Soviet Union fell apart from its own internal contradictions. And it is either extremely ignorant or Nazi apologia to suggest that the Soviet Union fell apart to its own internal contradictions. And this is why the only internal contradictions that the Soviet Union experienced was from mainly the US exerting external pressure, including funding dissidents within the Soviet Union, such as funding the leadership, such as promoting compradors, such as endless volumes of external propaganda to try turn the citizens against the revolutionary accomplishments. The critique is ridiculous to make because the Soviet Union faced 50 years of sanctions, of embargoes, of being fucked over, of an arms race, of a nuclear arms race. 5 decades of Cold War is what drove them to desperation, and eventually the broken promises and the broken treaty that the US made and coerced them into signing. That is not an internal contradiction. Anyways, I bring it up because it's part of a broader pattern. And this is a pattern within the West, where writers are encouraged to put anti-communist or anti-Soviet material within their works in order to sell. I noticed this reading Kristen Godsey's white nationalist apologia tire fire of a book. And I noticed this same phenomena in hearing about Naomi Klein's work as well. So I totally recommend the book to people who need to see and witness in real time that the US is the kingpin of imperialism, that they have shaped the development of the world, and that they have an iron fist, and that they throw it at anybody who dares to make revolutionary progress.